Welcome into the Ravens Rundown by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. He is Matthew Peterson. The official league year has officially started. 4 o'clock Eastern on the East Coast, and right after that, the Baltimore Ravens made a pretty big splash here in NFL free agency by signing former edge rusher for the Green Bay Packers, Za'Darius Smith, 6'4", 272, started his career with the Baltimore Ravens back in 2015 after being a fourth-round pick. Because of his solid play with Baltimore, was able to land a pretty nice contract with the Green Bay Packers. He was there for a few years. This past year, only played one game, and his season was cut short due to injury, but in the process, the Ravens are able to add to their defense, add to their defensive line, and bring in a player with good pedigree and good familiarity, Matthew Peterson.
And this is a move we've seen the Ravens do before. Like Pernell McPhee's a player that was with the Ravens, left to go to Chicago, then went back to Baltimore. And Za'Darius Smith, who, like you mentioned, Chase, did have his 2021 season cut short, only played one game due to a back injury. But before that, he was one of the top pass rushers. He was a Pro Bowl guy in 2020 and 2019. 13.5 sacks in his first year in Green Bay, 12.5 in 2020. So the Ravens are trying to, I bet they'll be happy to get a 10-sack guy out of Za'Darius Smith, but this is a Baltimore Ravens franchise that just has a defensive DNA in them. They love to rush the quarterback, get after him. They love to bring blitz packages. And Za'Darius Smith, he offers those kind of looks for Baltimore. So I think it's a good move by Harbaugh, especially when you look at the details. 4-year, $35 million. A bit of a bargain for a player that had 13.5 sacks 2 years ago, 12.5 sacks the season before that. Just played one game this past season, so you don't know what you're going to get, as it's been a bit removed for Za'Darius Smith until, in terms of how much playtime you're going to get out of him. But overall, I think this is a move that the Baltimore Ravens will look back and think this is a smart signing, especially when you look at Joe Burrow, right? One of the rising quarterbacks in the division. You got to find a way to bring him down. And sure, the Bengals offensive line does that for you a lot of times by just opening up, big holes for defensive players to come through. But I think the Ravens are looking at this division, especially if Deshaun Watson ends up in Cleveland. That's another key quarterback the Ravens have to find a way to bring down to the ground.
So we'll continue to break this move down, but first, what do you think about this 4-year, $35 million deal for Za'Darius Smith? When he's healthy, man, he's a really good pass rusher and pretty good against the ground game as well. Your one-word reaction to the Smith signing, let us know in the comment section right now. Pretty interesting story for him, too, Petey. He goes to East Mississippi Community College, one of the schools featured on Last Chance U on Netflix. He goes to Kentucky. He's a middle-round pick in 2015 coming out of Kentucky, 4th round. And the career progression was really, really impressive for him. As a rookie, 5.5 sacks in 15 games, 13 games in his sophomore campaign at age 24. Only had 1 sack. That goes up to 3.5. Then he really started to find his groove. 8.5 sacks with Baltimore in 2018, and we know that edge rushers are really, really important for all teams out there, and sometimes they get overpaid in free agency. That final year in Baltimore, 8.5 sacks, that's what earns him that payday, and the Green Bay Packers, for them to bet on him, it worked out. 13.5 sacks, as you talked about, Matthew, back in 2019, and because of that, he was named a Pro Bowler. The year after that, in 2020, 12.5 sacks, second-team All-Pro as a pass rusher, also made it to the Pro Bowl. And then last year, 1 game played, comes back for that divisional round matchup against the San Francisco 49ers, was able to flash just a bit. But again, player with familiarity. Yes, they change defensive coordinators, but they're going to do some of the similar things. They have a really good back end, bringing in Marcus Williams. You still have Marlon Humphreys. You still have Marcus Peters. This is a good defense. We'll see what happens with Lamar Jackson. That's really the big looming question for Baltimore. But the point here being, this team is ready to win. They're ready to compete. And Za'Darius Smith is a win-now type of transaction.
He is, right? This is not this is a good developmental kind of signing. Another thing you got to remember is the Ravens likely not having Calais Campbell return, right? The star pass rusher, star defensive player up front for Baltimore, getting up in the age column, hits free agency. I haven't heard much rumors or talk of him trying to come back for one last ride. So Za'Darius Smith, I think, proves a very good replacement for Calais Campbell. A bit younger, and then once again, kind of tuning out 2021. He only played 1 game, so that's not really fair to him to look at. But look at the numbers in 2020. 12.5 sacks for Green Bay, 4 forced fumbles. He was part of a good defense for the Packers.
Yeah.
And so the Ravens, they also just like the idea. This is a Baltimore franchise that loves making good draft picks. Ozzie Newsome did that for a very long time. Za'Darius Smith was one of those good draft picks. And if he wants to get the bag for another team for 3 years, like a rental almost, and then come back to Baltimore and help out Lamar Jackson and this Ravens team put together a championship roster, then this is the move to make right here. So I like the move. If you guys like the move and you want more Ravens coverage, then make sure you hit that big red button, subscribe, help our Ravens Rundown channel here at Chat Sports grow. What are we? Just over 200 subs away from 4K. So make sure you are subscribed, because if you want more Ravens coverage, this is the place for it.
Yeah, 2,200 people watching live on our main Chat Sports YouTube channel, and a little more than 200 people away from 4,000 subs on the Ravens Rundown. Producer Jeremy doing a great job with building that channel up. And some just additional thoughts. We'll get to the NFL free agency tracker here. With Za'Darius Smith, like, you prioritize really that defensive line. Now you have him, Odafe Owe. They're going to be able to, pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. But in that back end, it allows Marlon Humphrey to do his job as an island corner, and Marcus Peters to maybe take some gambles at that cornerback spot if he's not a cut candidate. You allow them to be comfortable, and really you allow some of those pass rushers to really just, put their hand in the dirt, get after the opposing quarterback. I like the makings of what the Ravens are doing on the defensive side of the football. And as for what they've done so far in NFL free agency, they made a huge splash on Tuesday by bringing in Marcus Williams. They were bidding with the Philadelphia Eagles, and they win that battle. They ink him to a 5-year, $70 million deal coming up north from the New Orleans Saints. I love his coverage skills as kind of a center field type of safety. Ravens fans know all about that with the great years of Ed Reed. Morgan Moses, 3-year, $15 million deal. It's a pretty good signing as well. Coming to Baltimore from the New York Jets, 17 games played last year, only 4 sacks allowed. So he helped beef up that offensive line, which last year was not good. And Alejandro Villanueva, he retired. We'll see what happens with Bradley Bozeman, a really good center for Baltimore. Does he go elsewhere? Because he has an opportunity to secure the bag, but positions of importance, right? Offensive line, defensive line, safety. Some of these big positions that Baltimore has spent big on in free agency thus far.
And remember last year, the Ravens were by far the most injury-riddled team. At one point, even if you didn't like the Ravens, you had to think you got to feel a little bad for these guys. So we are seeing this Ravens team add some depth. They're not taking any chances. They don't want to have back-to-back seasons completely derailed by injuries. This was a Ravens team that was going to the playoffs up until the last 5-6 weeks of the season, where injuries just completely turned it around. So you help out by help keep Lamar Jackson healthy by adding to that front line, signing Morgan Moses, who was a bit of a reach last year for the Jets, and then really I would say saved his career a little bit by putting some great play together, helping him get a 3-year, $15 million contract. So I like that move a lot for Baltimore. And then the big 2 signings, Marcus Williams and now Za'Darius Smith. You add some depth to this defense. I have liked what I've seen out of Baltimore so far. Not a big surprise. This is a Ravens organization that makes good signs, makes good moves, and just puts good pieces together and always keeps himself in championship contention. So what do you think about these moves so far? If you had to grade it with a red pen, what letter grade would you give it? A, B, C, D, or F? Chase, I'm thinking a B+,
yeah,
A-.
I'm going about that range because you have to compete in a gauntlet of a division. Pittsburgh's going to be good, and they're going to rebound. Is Cleveland going to land Deshaun Watson? We'll see. Either way, very good roster. Cincinnati coming off a Super Bowl appearance, going to be fascinating in the AFC North here in 2022.